An urban American moves to Ireland and finds himself embroiled in an ancient disaster that nearly split the universe apart. He and his new friends must hold our world and theirs together until the final healing can take place. This is Craic in the World. These audio adventures are supported by listeners like you. Without your help, these stories can't be produced. If these stories feed your imagination, please consider helping me feed my family by visiting joshuadavidling.com/support and becoming a monthly contributor. Also, if you'd like to be a sponsor of this podcast in exchange for an audio advertisement, get in contact with me at joshuadavidling.com. Today's episode is sponsored by the following.
Christians who are artists, artisans, and creators are a unique unit in the war on culture. They're often over and underestimated at the same time. What does it take to be an artist, and what does it take to win the culture war? Join Joshua David Ling as he rallies the troops to answer these questions and promote the best artists for God's glory. We're in this war together. Join us at the front at joshuadavidling.com/poets-at-war.
And now, Craic in the World, Episode 1, The Protector and the Conduit. 1. American Exile. Jayshawn Grogan was a little boy, raised in New Orleans. His parents had a hard time keeping up with him. Every night they'd drink themselves green. They were never abusive to Jayshawn, but he had to fight for his life. At school, at the corner, and in between, his young days were full of strife. One day, Jayshawn had had enough. It was time for him to break free. So at 16, he stowed away on a ship, and to Ireland he did flee. His gram wrote him letters from her home there, so to Ballyshannon he'd go. He'd seek a new life on the Emerald Isle, and his gram he'd finally know. He found his gram without a problem. She took care and pulled some strings. She got him Irish citizenship, among many other things. Those 6 years with her were loving and carefree, until one day she died. Peacefully she drifted off in her sleep, but before she'd slept, she'd tried to write Jayshawn about something important, but it looked like gibberish. Symbols and letters all jumbled up. Was one of them a fish? Jayshawn inherited the house and put the message away. He always thought his gram a little crazy, but he'd find out one day exactly how sane old Grandma was. The clock of time ticked by. And this is where our story truly begins, in the middle of July. 2. Bumping into Destiny. The streets of Ballyshannon hummed in the middle of afternoon. Light drizzle served to paint the town in a thin but substantial gloom. Jayshawn walked, hands in pockets, feeling alone and lost. But that was certainly nothing new. His life had had quite a cost. But just as Jayshawn began to despair, destiny hit him hard. A petite young woman running full bore slammed into him, and both were jarred. Both took a moment to collect themselves, and Jayshawn saw her face. The palest countenance he'd ever seen. She was a creature of grace. Her platinum blonde hair was almost white, and the only color to be seen was her bicolored eyes smiling. One orange, the other green. "You all right? Why were you running?" He was answered before he knew. A man in a suit stepped around a corner, continuing to pursue. He pulled a gun from his coat and pointed at the girl. Jayshawn took the pale girl's hand, and into the crowd they whirled. 3. The Protector. Shots were fired into the air, making the crowd scatter quick. Jayshawn pulled her through an alleyway that with people was less thick. They rounded a bend and came to his house. He fumbled around for his keys. He unlocked the door and they stepped inside. "Would you tell me, please, why is Agent Smith there, and why is he mad at you? What in God's green earth and Sam Hill did you do?" "Why did you bring me here?"
Did you pick that lock?
What? Jayshawn said, his confidence rocked. What are you talking about? Are you mental or something? Why in the world was that man coming at you like that with a gun in hand?
You have her eyes. Do you know the plan?
Do I sound like I know some secret plan? And who is she? Do you mean my gram? Just then, the lock on the door was shot, and the gunman kicked right in. Jayshawn disarmed the man in a second, twisting his wrist, breaking the limb. He slammed him down on the ground and got on top. With his forearm, he choked the gunman out. He rose and took the gun in hand. You better tell me right now. Who are you, girl, and what is this plan? Jayshawn began to tie up the gunman who'd been chasing her. She looked frightened and worried, and struck with awe, but definitely sure that she could trust Jayshawn with her life. He just saved her right here. She took a deep breath to calm her nerves and silence any lingering fear.
Was your grandmother Lydia Grogan?
And what are you doing there? Jayshawn had picked up his phone to call the police to get them there. I'm calling the fuzz. What's it look like?
Oh, please, don't call them now.
Girl, you must be hella insane. You think I'm gonna stop now? The woman grabbed the phone from his hand and slammed it on the receiver, then spoke fast and trembling, spilling out words almost like she had a fever.
My name is Zoe Wallace, around here anyway, but my real name is Iona Ashling, and you saved me this day. I knew your grandmother from years ago. She was my last protector. Now I'm alone, though. Are you her blood? Or were you adopted? I guess it doesn't much matter. The job of the protector is so simple.
Are you done with your chatter? Zoe, is it? You knew my gram?
Yes, she was wonderful to me. She knew our fight to keep Otherworld and this world strong and free, from the ripples of the event that caused the rift in time.
Whoa, Dimensional Girl, I think you lost your mind. I'm calling the cops, whether you like it or not. You can stay or get out. But don't think I'm trying anything funny. I ain't afraid to choke you out. Zoe frowned. Her eyes pleaded with him, but she got up and ran. She sprinted past the broken door into the streets of Ballyshannon. Chapter 4. Research Time. I'm just sure he just busted in by himself. No one else was involved. I told you 7 times, officer. I don't care if it can't be solved. No one else was here when he shot my lock. I fought him. I won. Is that such a big shock? The cop frowned and moved along, not daring to ask any more of the grandson of that crazy old woman who lived at the address 204. The cops left, and Jay was finally alone with himself and with his thoughts. So he turned to Google for the answers he sought. He found a lot of crazy speculation on the albino girl with 2 different colored eyes that had just rocked his world. But only one result was local, and it came from a blog, from a local bookstore that was only a 15-minute jog. Jayshawn shut his computer down and left his home without a lock, and he set out for Diok Alish, just around the block. 5. Paddy Hallett. Diok Alish was a small storefront Jayshawn had passed before. It was a hole in the wall just down the street, and very obviously a bookstore. The dark green paint hid something inside, and on Jay's mind it played Head Wars. But he pressed on and went inside, and it smelled very musty. The books on the shelves were mostly very old, dingy, faded, and dusty. Then he navigated the labyrinth of bookshelves to the front counter in the back, which sat next to a cage for ancient books and other valuables to be kept. The little woman, about 30 years old, with a brunette braid, popped out, almost like a meerkat from his den, and she greeted him with a shout. Welcome to Diakolish. Can I help you today, kind sir? Looking for anything in particular, or are you not yet sure? She pushed her glasses up on her nose and smiled at him professionally. Yeah, I want to know what you think about a resident albino chick. I saw your blog post on your website, and there you kind of lay it on thick. Something about a crazy event thousands of years ago. Well, you're half right. The precipitous event took place around 1100, though. She went about her business, putting more books on shelves. Jayshawn followed as she explained. This world has been through hell, what with the otherworld connection slowly spiraling completely out of control. See, you lost me again there, sister. You're on quite a roll. She sighed but smiled once again and held out her hand to him.
Pleased to meet you, sir. My name is Patty Hallett, and all I'm telling you isn't a whim.
I never said I thought it was. There's something weird about that girl.
So you've met her before? What was she like? I hear she's as pale as a pearl.
She's interesting, to say the least. So what was this event?
Basically a legend that simply states something cosmic is happening at present, and has been happening since the 1100s, where another dimension and ours collided, and now the two are unraveling fast, and you're not listening, she chided.
Mostly because I'm looking at that monster staring at me from outside. Patty's eyes widened as her door flung open, and Jayshawn ran to hide. A werewolf-like creature about 7 feet tall barreled in right at Patty. Patty stood her ground with surprising confidence and said,
"That's a good boy, laddie. Come to sister, we'll take care of you."
And when it got there, she sidestepped it. It landed in the ancient book's cage, and she very quickly locked it. The monster thrashed inside the cage, angrily snarling and trouncing about. Patty put her hands on her hips.
"Stupid man. Now I'm out."
She turned her attention to Jayshawn, who sat staring at the beast.
"Come on, I'll buy you a drink. It's the very least that I can do after a sight like this. My brother can be quite the pain sometimes. I need a pint or two to relax me bones, and you look like you need to unwind. There's no one coming in this store while Ted is in his fog. Come on, man. Have a drink with me down at the Handsome Hog."
6. The Tale of Ted Hallett. Darkness was upon Ballyshannon. It was too hot to work in the day, and so at the ruins of Cullahill Castle they worked the night away. The archaeologists were led by native Theodore Hallett V. His fathers worked on the same site. Its secrets they tried to lift.
"Sir,"
a grunt called as he put his shovel down.
"I think I found the entrance to the King's Crown."
That passage by name was legendary. Very few thought it was real. Ted hopped down into the pit to get a better feel. Sure as sure, a single file tunnel, marked with engravings and art, had been unearthed by his new grunt member, the one who was named Bart. "Get a team together, Johnny. We are going in."
"Can't we wait for tomorrow, Teddy? Oh, what if there's beasties within?"
"We're going down, and that is that. This is an amazing find. They say kings stored the treasures in here. Let's see what kind of kinds." Into the darkness they crept along. The cold wind rattled their bones. Everyone but Ted looked freaked out. The tunnel seemed to drone. "Johnny, shine your light over there." Johnny didn't respond.
"I think he went to get some supplies."
"I hope that you're not wrong." They continued further and heard something sniff. "What's wrong, Connor? You smelling something?"
"No, but something is."
"Where's Connor? Where'd he go?"
"Probably to the fridge. I heard his tum-tum rumbling a little bit ago."
Bart suddenly cried out in alarm, and Ted was all that was left to show. A low and primal growl emanated from the hall, and forward loped a two-legged hound. Ted pressed against the wall. Its forelimbs were shaped like a man's, but clawed like a rabid dog. He had no doubt. This was a werewolf, and to his death he had slogged. There was a shining pendant of stone around the beast's broad neck. Ted grabbed it and jerked with all his might, trying to choke it to death. But the pendant broke free and hit the wall. The stone was shattered there. The werewolf instantly turned to gold treasures, and Ted just couldn't leave it there. He grabbed the necklace to confirm all was real, and he ran out of that tomb. But as he ran in the moonlight, he felt a sudden gloom. He limped right over to their tents and saw Bart's mirror there. He jumped and roared at the image he saw, a werewolf holding its stare. He backed away, as did the wolf, and he suddenly realized he was now a werewolf too, and he howled into the skies. 7. More than can be imagined. Paddy Hallett sat with Jayshawn, his jaw dropped open in shock. Paddy Hallett chugged down her beer and then wiped some foam from her smock.
My brother changes back and forth, not knowing when it will happen. But sure enough, he is the werewolf of this town, Ballyshannon.
That's insane. I'm not sure I believe it, even though I saw it myself. Paddy leaned into the table's low light.
Umina there's an elf.
She pointed to a short bartender. Jayshawn looked puzzled the more. What the heck are you saying now?
To wake you up and see what's sure. There are more creatures hereabouts in this world than anyone knows. These secrets aren't very well kept. You just have to look past your nose. There are giants and fairies and sprites and more. But no one would just look out their front door. People love to be ignorant of the wonder of this world. They say fairy tales are hogwash, meant for boys and girls. But I know the truth, and the truth is this. The world is more wondrous than you thought could exist.
Kumina, the alleged elf, came over and refilled Paddy's mug of beer with a brew both frothy and chilled. Kumina looked like a tiny woman around the age of 22. She wore a baggy knitted hat in patterns of red and blue. Her hair and hat would have covered her ears, if pointed they really were, and Kumina didn't look very pleased with the things Paddy had conferred.
Couldn't help but overhearing your telling this one my secret. Tell me why I shouldn't slit your throat, Miss Pretty Paddy Hallett.
Jayshawn grabbed a steak knife and slid it into his sleeve. Kumina put a hand on his wrist and said to him,
Honey, please. If I wanted to kill either of you, I'd have done it by now. Kumina comes from a warrior tribe. This conversation I'll allow, as long as you let me tell my own tale. Paddy has a way of lying, over-dramatizing the facts to fantasy for anyone who's inquiring.
Paddy went to protest, but Jayshawn gave her a look, and Kumina sat down. Her time she took.
I was part of the Protector clan, out in Otherworld. I protected the conduits who kept the link connected between there and our little world. I had it all, fortune and fame, and a fiancé that was mine. Till one day I was framed for his murder. I was stuck with the crime. Unlike your world here, where things are black and white, I was sentenced on a middle ground, where they said there was not enough light to see what could have been found, so neither guilty nor innocent. I was banished to earth instead, to live out the rest of my immortal days in nothing but sadness and dread.
Paddy put a hand on her shoulder, and Jayshawn felt pangs too. The story Kumina told brought sympathy for the little elf who was so blue. She pulled the corner of her hat up to show Jayshawn it was true. Her ear was long and pointed underneath. This changed all that he knew. So you were a protector too?
Too, he says, Patty dear. I haven't heard of a protector in these parts for over 100 years. He is one. He has the mark.
Jayshawn looked confused.
And I believe the last conduit is in Ballyshannon. He is less than enthused. Well, we've got to show him his path then, don't we?
You two are crazy, for reals. Jayshawn got up to leave the table without even paying for his short meal. 8. Werewolf on the Loose. But when Jayshawn got to the front door, he looked out and saw a sight. A snarling, hairy wolf-man beast making everyone run in fright. Paddy came running.
Ted got out! We have to capture him now, before he hurts anyone else. Or hurts himself somehow.
Paddy looked pleadingly at Kumina, who now looked very annoyed.
More help cleaning up your mess? I am overjoyed.
The elf took off her apron.
To me, a debt you owe. Just give me a second to get my armor, my quiver, and my bow.
Kumina scampered off, and Paddy looked concerned. She looked up to Jayshawn, who looked petrified.
If there's one thing you must have learned from your grandma, it's to step up and assist. I need your help now, Protector Jayshawn. Things might be at their bleakest.
Paddy pointed and Jayshawn looked, and he saw Zoe Wallace being attacked. She had climbed up to an awning above a shop, but the werewolf would not move back.
If she is killed, this world will collapse, and beauty will be forever gone. Please help us, Protector Grogan, sir. Please help us, brave Jayshawn.
Look, just stop it. You're so dramatic. I'll help save whoever I can. But we're waiting for Kumina to get back. She's the one with the plan. She's also got some arrows too, if she wasn't just talking in metaphor. Just chill with me. He hasn't seen us. Just chill for a few minutes more. 9. To catch a werewolf. Paddy grabbed a cricket bat from off the wall at the pub. Jayshawn grabbed himself one too, to use as a sort of club. The werewolf man was almost upon her. Zoe trembled and backed away. Now there was no time to wait for Kumina. They had to fight this day. Jayshawn said a little prayer. Then they dashed out at the beast. Paddy swung at the beast's knees and took him off his feet. Zoe screamed and turned and ran. The beast caught Jayshawn's bat. He splintered it within his grip and roared on top of that. Jayshawn and Paddy took a step or two back, but Paddy barked in his face.
Back down, Ted. I know you're in there. Get back to the safe place.
Ted's roar turned to a guttural growl, and Paddy pushed forward toward him.
Ted, I am not letting you do this. Do you hear me? Are you within?
Ted backed up into a corner, his werewolf form unsure. Paddy reached out to touch him, but he swatted at her more. Then from atop a nearby wall, in the alley they had led him to, they heard a song in Gaelic sung by a voice that was solemn and blue. Jayshawn looked up and saw Zoe, or Ziona, as she said her name was. She was singing to the beast below, and he whined and raked his claws against the brick of the wall that separated him from his pale white prey. But Ted Hallett, in werewolf form, would not get her this day. An arrow from Kumina's bow flew down the alley and hit Ted's backside and penetrated deep, and the beast began to quit. Ted turned back into a man, naked in that alleyway. Paddy pulled the arrow right out. Are you sure that's the way?
He still has healing powers going up to an hour after he's changed. If I left that arrow in his rear, his seat he'd need to rearrange.
That still doesn't really explain how he fell asleep like that. Kumina came down the alleyway swaggering like a cat.
You sure waited long enough. I had to find my bow. It's very seldom I get to use it now. Come on, pick him up and let's go.
I don't like this, guys. What if his sleepiness is a trick?
It isn't, numbskull. I did it. The secret's in my spit.
Say what? Jayshawn exclaimed in shock. Are you telling me you got venom?
It won't kill you, but it'll make you sleep. We need to get him some denim.
Jayshawn turned and looked up the wall. Zoe was still standing there. She smiled and quietly stared at them all, her gratitude expressed with a glare. Why don't you come down and join us, Zoe? Maybe it's time you had some fun.
Aye, I'll treat you to a pint. A pint? Let me show you how it's done.
They all laughed and Zoe climbed down the wall, and they all went to get Ted's clothes. Soon enough, they ended up at the Handsome Hog to celebrate and drown their woes. 10. The Protectors reform. When all was said and all was done, they sat together. Their battle was won. Paddy filled Ted in as much as she could. Then Zoe told stories of evil and good. She told them of the event that was set off in time and how Earth and Otherworld continued to unwind. She told them of the conduits who bound them together and the ancient plan for how Jayshawn thought she was clever. Then she told them all about her woes and of her mirth, to be the last living conduit on the planet Earth. At this revelation, the table went silent with dread. Are you saying without you, we'd all be dead?
Not quite dead, but you'd be lifeless. This world continues to slow. All wondrous and fantastic activity that allows this world to grow. If its bond with Otherworld is severed for a moment, all beauty and joy would cease to exist. And a similar fate would be reckoned to the people of Otherworld. They'd be more like abstract thoughts, floating around with no concrete form. I guess you can connect the dots. You need help right away, and we'll be there for you. I say we make Jayshawn the leader. All who think that's cool?
What? Everyone raised their hand in a moment. Jayshawn looked around and sighed. This isn't something I should be scared of. In fact, I take some pride. We're the last protectors on Earth. We'll protect Zoe to the death. I've accepted that this is the reason why God gave me breath. And so the Conduit had her protectors, but safe would she always be? There's many a thing in Ballyshannon. I suppose we'll continue on and see. Thank you all for listening to this episode of Craic in the World. Episode 2 will be The Child of Heart. You can find out more by going to joshuadavidling.com. Thank you all so much, and look forward to hearing from you next time.